I think Doug's lost it. He's going to pitch an idea on how the Charlotte Hornets can actually make the play-in tournament. I don't know if I'm going to buy in, but I'll stay tuned, as you should as well. And then we'll get to some of the guys coming back from injury. What happens when LaMelo Ball returns? Mark Williams. Does Mark Williams play basketball again this season? We'll get to all of it going into the All-Star break today on Locked On Hornets.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. I'm Walker Mail. You can listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. on Wes and Walker, 92.7 FM. And there's Doug Branson. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. Doug, what's with the first bullet point? Come on, man. What are you doing?
Crazy.
I don't look. You brought out the elevator. Don't bring out the elevator. You brought out the umbrella a couple of times. Yeah, don't go down. You brought out the umbrella a couple times. And I don't want to rain on this idea, but I quote somebody that was also on this podcast, and his name rhymes with Mug Manson, okay? Maybe you go with a different last name there. We go Doug Branson also a couple of days ago saying, well, look, I'm not telling you they're going to win a lot more games with these new additions. I'm not telling you that's going to happen. I said, yeah, I would check you on that if you did. But then they go 3-0, and here you are contemplating if the Hornets are a play-in team. You are the guy at the chalkboard going crazy, trying to figure out a way that they can get in there. Have you figured out the way that the Hornets can really get into the play-in tournament?
Well, listen, the play-in tournament was built for dreamers, okay? It was built for teams.
Good point.
It was built for teams to continue to compete even though they had no reason to compete before under the old playoff system. And the Hornets are perfectly built for this because, again, they've already struck gold twice in the draft with LaMelo Ball and now with Brandon Miller. Damn the draft. And it's a weak draft. The difference between, really 1 to 7 is really not that significant this upcoming season. And so there's really no reason to even go for those top or bottom 4 seeds to go for the top odds. There's no reason. So why not compete as hard as you can to get into the play-in? And then the question becomes, is it mathematically possible? Because you look at the record, and they're 13-41, and they're only 13-41 because they've won 3 straight. They were at 10 games, now they're at 13. And so you look at that and you go, no way. Just no way. But then you look up a little farther in the Eastern Conference standings to that 10th seed, that final spot in the play-in. And who sits there? The Atlanta Hawks, the team that the Charlotte Hornets just beat by double digits, 122-99. They are playing incredible defense right now, and the offense, they finally have an offense that's coming off the bench. Everything's falling into place for the Charlotte Hornets. So going back to Atlanta, they are 7 games back of 500, okay? Let's just say, look, the Eastern Conference is not very good this year, or at least, top to bottom, not very good this year. So let's put that number back. Let's say that the 10th seed this season, I won't even go too far. I'll just say 8 games back of 500. You still with me? 8 games back of 500 makes the bottom of the play-in, okay? You all right?
Okay.
You good?
Okay. Yeah, okay. I'm good.
So that would mean that the Charlotte Hornets would need to win 20 of the next 28 games. That's insane, right? To win 20 of the next 28 games that they have remaining, that's crazy. That would be only 8 losses, okay? But if you think that's insane, I would refer you to the 2013-2014 Charlotte Bobcats team that was coached by who? Who coached that team?
Not Mike Dunlap.
Nope. Not Mike Dunlap. Not Paul Silas. It was Steve Clifford. And they finished 43-39. Now, the Hornets aren't going to win 43 games.
That's right.
But that team, if you look at their last 28 games, guess how many games that team won in their last 28?
Is it 20?
It's 20!
Oh,
congratulations.
God.
Good guess. How did you guess that?
I'm a smart man. That's how I was able to guess it. 20 out of 28. I would say it's a beautiful, beautiful way for us to get to the play-in tournament. It does leave out a little context onto who was on that team compared to who was on this team with the Eastern Conference. That was definitely weaker that year than it is this season. This is the Eastern Conference, as we've said before, that is not your daddy's Eastern Conference. It is very different. But I don't want to rain on the parade anymore. You can put away the umbrella. If you want to create this way, that's totally fine, because the Atlanta Hawks, Chicago is right ahead of Atlanta. They're 26-29. It feels like Atlanta is the only. If you have a shot anyway, how are you doing this? You're getting me to actually try to explore this a little bit. But Atlanta is the 10 seed. That's the only team that you could even possibly pass on your way to the play-in tournament. And they're 7 games below 500, as you mentioned.
Yeah, some added context. I'm not going to rain on it either, but there are a lot of away games, especially coming off of this break. They got to go to Utah, Golden State, Portland. Then they have a home and home against Milwaukee, and then another game against Philadelphia. But after that initial pain, it does let up a little bit, and they've got a significant number of home games in March and April. And so, again, it is the longest of long shots, but the Hornets have every incentive to continue to compete. And so, what I'm trying to get across here is it's not only not mathematically impossible, it's actually something that this team has accomplished before. And I understand, yes, Kemba Walker and Al Jefferson, but also this team seems to be functioning at a high level, and they're going to get LaMelo Ball back. I mean, I hope. It just seems like LaMelo Ball.
That's fair. Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're going to get their best player back, and they've just won 3 straight. So, yeah, I think that I'm just trying to give some hope to people out there who want to continue to watch Hornets basketball. Because a lot of people, like if you look at my X timeline right now, the number of people who are interacting with these tweets, they have just been sitting, the silent majority has just been sitting back, being sad about Hornets basketball. And as soon as something great happens, everybody's flooding to talk about it. And I'm just telling you that they've got a shot here.
No, Hornets Twitter is interesting to see just how and it's interesting in a way that it's predictable, but also like really in a fun way, right? Like the way to get a lot of engagement is to tweet a highlight montage of LaMelo Ball, tweet a highlight montage of Brandon Miller, and then put out a clip with maybe just like a little tiny piece of analysis, or just tweet some nice jokes when the Hornets are playing well or terribly. Now, usually we're doing the latter, and I'm only jokes guy on Twitter. Like maybe a little bit of analysis here and there. Like I'm not arguing because this is something you follow as well. But you're right, Doug. Like Hornets Twitter, it's a fun place to be actually right now. Like now, it's not usually that. Usually it's pretty dark in a lot of cases, especially with people that come in with their own ideas and they're just whatever. But it's been fun to watch all the Hornets fans interact with the way that they've been winning the last 3 games. This is why the Hornets fan base, man, they'll show up if you give them a product to cheer for. And we've seen it way too many times. It's why it's so frustrating when you see some of these rankings of Hornets fan bases or NBA fan bases and Hornets fans are dead last. Man, this team is showing up for freaking Micic, okay? Like you can't be dead last and show up and start falling in love with Micic. If you give them a 2-game winning streak. It wasn't even a 2-game winning streak, Doug. They beat Memphis, and the fan base was going crazy. Like, they will show up and cheer for the Hornets if you give them even a minuscule amount of something to cheer for. And that's why I'm glad the Hornets are giving the fan base a little taste of success here, and we can all understand that's part of the fun, just how little taste of that success that this is right now, because it's pretty damn small. But we're not one of the worst fan bases. It's just the Hornets have been one of the worst teams in forever.
No, you're right. And everything you just said there was important. But while you were talking, I was thinking of another argument. I was thinking of another argument for the Hornets making the play-in. Think about how many times they played teams out west before they made all of these transactions, before they started playing well. And all of these teams, both out west and some of the good teams that they played here in the East, think about all the times those teams did not take the Hornets seriously. They were out there trying to get Xbox achievements. Joel Embiid wouldn't even try to score. He would just try to rack up like 15 assists. They were just trying to go out there and see how much energy they had to expend. And sometimes in the first half of those games, a severely depleted, both from a talent perspective and an injury perspective, Hornets team would sneak up before getting blown out in the third quarter. I think that's going to continue to happen. There will be teams in the back half of this schedule that look at the record They don't look at the scouting report. They look at the record, and they do not take the Charlotte Hornets seriously, except this time the Hornets are coming with way more weapons than they had in that previous run. They are coming with Micic. They're coming with Mann. They are coming with Grant Williams from three and getting tough boards. They're coming with Seth Curry, who has the ability to score 18 points off the bench.
Yeah.
I don't want to. We should whisper when we talk about this. We should whisper so that these other teams don't hear, because the Hornets are back, baby. But let's keep it a secret.
And you know what? Last thing, like it's a secret, but we really need to get on FanDuel immediately before Vegas catches up.
All right.
I mean, we've been messing up. You
gotta bet the buzz.
We should have been betting the buzz after the first game. We should. Okay, we got 3 wins in a row, Doug. We need to do it post All-Star break. I'm hoping nobody pays attention. All-Star break, maybe we get a fun slam dunk contest. That's what everybody will be talking about, and nobody will adjust. Oh, wait, they have a bench now in Charlotte, and they shouldn't be a double-digit underdog. We need to do bet the buzz as much as possible so we can try to climb back up from the depths of hell that bet the buzz put us in. All right, let's move on. We have a couple more topics to get to coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Are these guys going to get healthy in LaMelo Ball and Mark Williams? And once they come back, specifically LaMelo, who hits the bench? We'll get to that in just a moment on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Basketball host Josh Lloyd to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. And whether you're prepping for a daily draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. So let's see who Josh picked out for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Picks of the Week. Remember, Cody Martin was on this list last week, and Cody Martin is still on this list. I do think that you could just go ahead and pick him up again. He's been playing more, maybe until LaMelo comes back. He's a guy that could potentially hit the bench. That's true, but Cody Martin was on this list. Health permitting, could find himself in a strong role for Charlotte with Gordon Hayward now out in Oklahoma City. We've seen him have an uptick. We saw Brandon Miller shout him out. He's playing because of his defense, and he played well against Trae Young and the Atlanta Hawks, so maybe he just runs into some offense. And so if you're looking for a Charlotte Hornet, then Cody Martin is that guy. Josh Lloyd from Locked On Fantasy Basketball is going to help you win your fantasy championship. And eBay Motors knows a championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. It's the same with your vehicle. So make sure you go to ebaymotors.com. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you can now make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Brake kits, LED headlights, roof rack, bumpers, whatever your baby needs, eBay Motors has it. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or you get your money back. Plus, at these prices, you're burning rubber, not cash. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, Doug, speaking of Hornets Twitter, it's also like a predictable movement that we're all making, and I'm with the masses. This is not a bird's eye view of this. This is me understanding what's going on around me because I am directly within the crowd. And so what happens is we get excited about this 3-game winning streak, right? And what happens when you go into the All-Star break, now we get a lot of time to think. You used your time to think on how the Hornets get into the play-in tournament. A lot of other Hornets fans are using this time to think about, well, wait, if LaMelo is starting to warm up a little bit, if LaMelo is coming back soonish based on reporting and based off of us seeing him starting to warm up a little bit more, then what happens when LaMelo Ball comes back? Should we get a lot more excited? Great, of course, we should get excited. He's the number one guy on this roster, highest paid, could be a star. Once he gets back, it's great. He was a star before he got injured. So he comes back, but now you start to maybe worry a little bit about, okay, who goes to the bench? Is it Tre Mann? Is it Cody Martin in that backcourt? And now how does everything change? Because LaMelo is such a high usage basketball player. He's got the ball in his hands so much. That means very good things for everybody else involved. But for a guy like maybe Tre Mann, maybe taking the ball out of his hands isn't as great. And so you have to think about moving him to the bench. And so, okay, what does that do for a guy like Micic? Because Tre Mann, historically, at least the last few seasons, not a great shooter. but he's been playing very well here. Micic, same thing. So both of those guys, it feels like they need the basketball in their hands. And so does the bench continue to provide this type of production? I feel like LaMelo coming back, Doug, this is what happens when you bring a guy back of his caliber. But I'm fascinated to see how Steve Clifford navigates LaMelo's return to injury. Who do you think hits the bench, and how do you think the Hornets look when LaMelo comes back?
I think when you ask this question and when you try to predict it, I try to lean back on my knowledge of Steve Clifford and how he operates with lineups. And, with a starting lineup, he wants guys that he can trust, that he's seen a lot and knows will make the right play at the right moment, and knows will play solid defense to start off a game. And so when I look at Tre Mann or Cody Martin, I just have to lean towards Cody Martin, the guy that Steve Clifford knows a little bit more at this point, and gives that starting unit a little bit of a size boost, because Cody Martin's 6'6", Tre Mann 6'3". And then I go to your point, which is that if you're going to bring LaMelo Ball into the lineup, he is going to need the ball a ton, and so does Tre Mann. And so I think if you're a man stan, and there are a lot, judging by my timeline.
Yeah.
If you're a man stan, you actually want this guy going to the bench because he's going to have a big role, and he's going to be featured in some lineups where he can be the man instead of, waiting on LaMelo to do what he does and then being sort of a secondary playmaker or creator from that spot. So I think it actually benefits Mann to go to the bench. I think Cody Martin, look, defensively, I love what Mann has given this team over the past 3 games. And I think there is a defensive ceiling that he has not even reached yet. But I think Cody Martin, Steve Clifford trusted Cody Martin to shut down Trae Young, and he got the job done. So I really think that kind of tells you all you need to know. Having Cody Martin beside LaMelo Ball, it's kind of the dream, honestly. Like all those times we looked at, Rozier and Ball together, and you went, man, both those guys really dynamic playmakers, and they can create for themselves, and it's amazing offensively. But defensively, like this thing just can't work. But like having Cody Martin was somebody that you wanted on the bench unit because he provided a little bit of defense and versatility on a bench unit that didn't have it. But it has it now. Like you don't even need that. So Cody Martin in the starting lineup, I think makes the most sense for both players.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense too, but I was trying to think of how it works with Tre Mann and LaMelo in the lineup. So the backcourt, that's the more fun backcourt, certainly offensively. With Tre Mann playing this well defensively, which is new for him compared to just what you've seen in Oklahoma City and what people have talked about with him in the past. If he keeps this level of defense up, then there is a path for Tre and LaMelo to share that backcourt with one another. Doug, you tweeted out, did we just trade for younger and cheaper Terry Rozier? Terry Rozier and LaMelo Ball shared a backcourt together for quite some time here in Charlotte. So do you just – it's tough because Tre isn't the shooter that Terry is, and so you can't just like plug Tre into all of the plays that were designed for Terry, and there were a lot. You're not going to rely on Terry to do the half-court bailout thing, or you're not going to rely on Tre to do that like you did with Terry in some instances. And so perhaps that leaves more opportunity for LaMelo and then just dishing it to Tre Mann, and then he's got to knock down his catch-and-shoot threes and his open looks because LaMelo's going to get a lot of attention. But especially if we like having another ball handler alongside LaMelo, because I've always been a huge fan of that, right? 2 ball handlers right next to each other. LaMelo's such a good catch and shoot guy. I like the other backcourt member to be able to break guys off of the dribble and hit LaMelo wherever. Like that was always exciting. It's part of the reason why I like Scoot Henderson so much at the beginning of all of this, but Brandon coming in, clearly blowing that out of the water. And so do you get a little bit of this with Tre Mann in the starting lineup? This is a hard decision, because you're right. Cody Martin seems like the right choice because he's the defensive role player. He played so well against Atlanta. Steve Clifford knows him well, but also Cody Martin's a little injury prone. And so maybe you just see how Cody Martin feels. And then if he goes to the bench, then you'll have Tre. But, Tre could just maybe cook and destroy these fools as the 6th man and going against second unit players. Like this is tough. Like I think you make a case for either guy.
I think you can too, because if Cody Martin were shooting better, then I think this would be definitive. Like I would just come on here and say, there's just no question it's Cody Martin. Mm-hmm. But that shooting thing is the rub. And but I do think that having Tre Mann come off the bench, I mean, he's just like a perfect sixth man. I know he's enjoying starting right now, especially because he was completely out of the rotation in Oklahoma City. But you could sell Mann on, hey, you're going to be a huge part of this rotation. It's just going to be in a slightly different role. So I think this will be a tough decision for Steve Clifford. Ultimately, I think he goes with what he knows, and he leans on Cody Martin in that starting role. But it's just lovely to get on here and talk about the Hornets having difficult decisions to make, having options, and not difficult decisions because both players stink, but like difficult options because both players provide you with some vital things that you need. But what's been good about Tre Mann starting, and if he continues to start, if LaMelo doesn't come back immediately out of the All-Star break, is that Mann is developing a great relationship with Nick Richards. And if Mark Williams eventually returns, whether it's later this season or next season, it's going, and Mann goes to the bench too, like it's going to be Mann and Nick Richards continuing to create for each other in that second unit. And that's just going to be great for the Hornets.
The other great thing about this, and it's a little weird to talk about, considering we're talking about the Charlotte Hornets, it's that now you can start Mann as well, and you don't have to rely on playing him too much because you need a point guard for the second unit because you have Micic coming off of the bench. We just have an embarrassment of riches out there in the backcourt. This is weird.
You put those two guys together. The beauty of Mann, Martin, Micic, these three M's is that you can mix and match the three M's. I mean, it's great.
No, it is great. And so to have Micic coming off of the floor once
fruit salad, yummy.
Man, fruit salad. Although we're kind of throwing that away now. We're starting to see clear skies. We're starting to get mental clarity.
I'm going crazy. I'm still going crazy. I'm just going crazy in the opposite direction. It's a spectrum of crazy. On both ends of the spectrum is crazy. I'm just on the happy crazy end as opposed to the sad crazy end.
All right, so we don't even just have to worry about the backcourt, or not even worry about, just talk about what pieces fit where once this team starts to get healthy again. We also have to worry about the front court. What are they going to do there? Are they going to sign a different player? Is Mark Williams coming back? We'll get to that in just a moment. Coming up next on Locked On Hornets.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Will Mark Williams come back post All-Star break at all? Mitch Kupchak had some comments about that last week, post deadline during press availability. And are they interested in Nerlens Noel? Could they bring in another center out there on the market and put him in with the second unit? I think I couldn't hear you, Doug. I think you were just singing Noel, though. That's good.
You got it. You know me. So we've been working together too long. Even though you couldn't hear it, you knew it.
Boom. All right.
Fruit salad, yummy.
We'll talk about all that coming up next. Yeah, I now have Doug's singing in my head. I'm trying to get out of that. This episode is brought to you by Robinhood. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every single dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to their IRA with a 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. You can get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. One more segment to go. Locked On Hornets. All right, Doug, so we're all hoping for LaMelo Ball to come back as soon as possible. It does look like he is somewhat on the mend. Before we get to the Mark Williams convo, though, I do wonder how they would play this with LaMelo if they didn't look so much better these last 3 games. Is there any, hey, let's just hold off a little bit and, rest you a little bit more so? Do you think the 3-game winning streak, how much has it changed? like, has it changed what you do with a LaMelo and some of these other decisions that you have? Or even if they were 0-3, they were still getting beat by double digits. Maybe they win against Memphis because of their injuries too, but then they lose the next two. You think LaMelo is still on the same timeline?
I would hope so. I would hope that 3 games wouldn't change that. He's your most important player, and he's been injured so much that I think even if they continue to win, that there should be no rushing him back. It's just too important. You've signed him to a max contract that doesn't even take effect. It doesn't start. The clock on that doesn't start until next season.
Yeah,
there
Bertans
is just
is the
I don't care.
player.
I don't care if they. Here's how strongly I feel about it. I don't care if they've won 19 of those 20 games that they need to win to back into the play-in, and they need one more. And it's whether LaMelo plays or not. I don't care. He doesn't play. If he's not ready to play, then don't play him. There's nothing that you could throw at me that would be like, oh, yeah, rush him back. Just 1 second. Now, look, if he's healthy enough to play, then he needs to play. Because you can't avoid it.
That's the point I was asking, because I didn't want to rush him back. It was, okay, he is healthy, but we're still going to just make sure we stretch this thing out even more so. Okay, now we've won 3 straight. Now we have something to play for. LaMelo's healthy enough to go ahead, young fella, and get some buckets for us. Like that, it was more so the latter in what I was focusing on. But
as soon as he's healthy enough to play, and that's a determination that I'm sure he's making, his team's making, the training staff is making, which is a little, but whenever they make that determination, then he's got to play, because that's the only way that he's going to fully heal and fully get better, is to play on it, make it stronger, and prove that he can stay healthy. Like there's no path to him becoming what we all want him to become without him playing basketball. So he's just got to get out there if he's healthy.
No, he does. That's absolutely for sure. All right, let's go to the other injury that was a big one for the Charlotte Hornets earlier this season. Mark Williams. The question is, do we think he's going to come back and play post All-Star break? Mitch Kupchak did address this during, post-trade deadline media availability. And here's what he had to say about his injury. It is taking longer. He did see a specialist within the last week, and it's going to take some time. He expects 100% return to play. There's nothing here that will impact his playing career. I think the next update is 4 weeks, and that was actually exactly a week ago from today. So 3 weeks, referencing Mitch Kupchak's timeline. So 3 weeks, and then we'll see what happens there. But as I've mentioned time and time again when asked about Mark Williams, we never get good news. With that quote, perhaps you could look at the glass half full approach and say it's not career threatening, according to Mitch Kupchak. Okay, I'm going to take your word for it. I don't know why, but I'm going to just go ahead and do that because for my own sanity. You're also saying that he is going to return. Okay, I guess glass half full. That's a good thing. It's certainly better than him not playing the rest of the year. But overall, Doug, we really don't get good news on Mark Williams. Hopefully he comes back.
Well, this is a classic Kupchak quote where I think he gives you like both sides of the answer in the answer, because you could look at it and go, well, there's nothing here that will impact his playing career. That's great news. And then he expects 100% return to play. He expects 100% return to play. Not, why would you even say that? It's like, why would you say expects 100% return to play? Was there a worry that there was 95 or 90 or 80% return to play? Like, why would you even say something like that? And I think it's because
it's like always usually, right? Like you can't use both. People will do that. Like it's always usually correct. Wait, which one is it? Is it 100% going to play, or do you expect him to? If you expect him to, then you should. Yeah, you're right about that.
So I think there is serious concern with the back injury, and I think, and this is speculation, but I just really feel like this is a situation where they're trying to avoid surgery, because having back surgery, big guy, this early in his career would just not be great. And so I think they've been doing everything that they can in terms of rehabbing. It's just this stinks, because it was a lower back contusion. And then he was out, and then he tried to play again, and he just hasn't been able to play since. And it just stinks, because there is so much promise. It felt like the Hornets finally had their center of the future. Maybe they still do, but the fact that I even have to say maybe is what stinks about all this, because I really, and Mark just seems like such a good guy that wants to play, that wants to do the right things when he's on the floor. And so I really hope that 4 weeks from now we're talking about ramping Mark Williams back up to play and not, well, he's out for the rest of the season and we'll see what happens in the offseason.
All right, and so because of Mark Williams' injury, they are still depleted at the center position. You are getting some nice offense from Grant Williams. The rebounding has been very good for Grant Williams, certainly compared to what he's been doing his career, and it's been very different. He's physical, he's giving you defense, but he's still small. So do you need another big guy to throw into the lineup? Because, of course, if you don't have to throw out Nathan Mensah, then they're not going to do it, and I think Steve Clifford is wise to not throw him out there anymore if he, has a chance not to. Nerlens Noel, he's a guy that's out there that the Hornets might be interested in, according to Mike Scotto. He said free agent center Nerlens Noel has drawn exploratory interest from the New York Knicks, the Houston Rockets, and the Charlotte Hornets, league sources told Hoops Hype. It would make sense. I think Nerlens Noel has been a guy that's right on the line of all trade rumor team with the Hornets. It's been these centers in the past. Miles Turner is a Hall of Famer in this discussion. It feels like Russell Westbrook is a Hall of Famer in this discussion. Nerlens Noel, it feels like he's right on the line. He's not getting enough. He's not first ballot. He's not getting a ton of votes the first couple go rounds, but by his 10th year of eligibility, he might just get in. And this rumor is the last one here. Maybe not trade, but this rumor might just get him in here. Doug, what would you say about a Nerlens Noel edition?
Yeah, if this is sort of a recent report where the Hornets are exploring him and not like, oh, well, they called about him, a year ago, and so let's include them in the report too. If that is the case, it still would make some sense to me from a couple of perspectives. If you don't believe that Mark Williams is going to return and you think you could, if you're like me and you're crazy and you think this team can, make that 2013-14 back half insane run, 20 of 28 games and get in and sneak into that play-in, then stocking up at center would be good. Because, look, you're right. They have played well with Grant Williams on the floor. I threw this stat out on Twitter. Over these 3 games, small sample size, really small sample size, but there have been 6 lineups that have played greater than 10 minutes together over that 3-game winning streak. 2 of those lineups featured Richards at center, and those averaged a plus 13 net rating. Good. The other 4 lineups featured Grant Williams at center, and those lineups averaged a plus 44 net rating. They're with Grant Williams at center, they're not only playing well offensively, they're also still being able to maintain good defense, and I think that's just as much about Grant Williams and the effort that he's expending, but also the fact that you can throw some guards out there that don't get automatically crushed on the ball, so Grant Williams isn't even having to work as hard. But when you get into a play-in scenario or you get into some tight games late in the season, teams are going to look to exploit the fact that you're going to have to play Grant Williams so many minutes, so they've got to find some help. But there's this other sneaky thing, too, that I think they would be smart to find some kind of center on the free agency market right now that they could trial in is it Noel or Noel? I've always said Noel. If it's Noel,
yeah, I don't know.
Then I'm going to go Noel and say,
I remember
if they want to trial, go ahead.
Go ahead, Doug. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, I interrupted you. I'll throw $1 in there.
Thank you.
But I just, every time I think of him, I think of the mixtape coming out of like 2021. His high school mixtape was absolutely ridiculous. And you get some of these guys that maybe don't live up to it. And, he was fine enough in the NBA. Here he is still in the NBA 10 years later. Anyways, Noel mixtape, still fire. Go ahead.
So I think you have an opportunity here to trial him. And then you go into the offseason. Nick Richards was in these pre-trade deadline rumors. I think he's going to be continue to be because of the way he's played this season, which is well, and the size of his contract, which is small. I think he will continue to be in trade rumors this upcoming offseason when they've got picks and they've got, they may have, a star in the making guard in Tre Mann. They may have too many guards. They've got a lot of things they can mix in the old, trade pot. And Nick Richards could be one of those players. And so it would be interesting to trial somebody if you believe that Mark Williams is going to come back 100% and be your starting center. It's not a bad idea to see if there are other centers out there that could fill that backup role if you think you can get some serious value for Nick Richards.
I just last thing on Mark Williams, I feel like we've had our conversations with Mark, and there's been some growing pains for him in the second season. There's no doubt about that. I didn't expect to see him as frequently as we did, and we still get the flashes of just awesome play, like really impacting the game at a crazy high level. And then the lack of physicality, that's the way you beat him, right? You drive him out of the paint, you just get a little physical with him, and he can still finish. I mean, offensively, the finesse is there. That's still a lot of fun, but physicality is the way you beat him. Doug, even though we've seen some of that, I still think Mark Williams is kind of the player that you don't realize what you have until he's gone. And I think the Hornets, I think as fans, we did know that. Like, we did know a little bit of, okay, we finally have our rim protection. He was very good as a rookie. He still had some very good games as a second-year player. But you just look at some of the advanced metrics on how much he helped this team. Like, it's the on-off numbers are pretty crazy, even offensively and defensively. Like, both. It's nuts, like, for a big guy. Now, that's at the beginning of the season when you weren't as depleted injury-wise. And so I think the numbers are, skewed a little bit there. So you can take that into consideration. But Mark just changes the way that guards can attack once you get inside in a way that Grant can't, but Grant is clearly the better shooter. And so offensively, he can open up a bunch of lanes. And Grant's like a legitimately good shooter, has been his entire time really in the NBA, and provides the physicality. Mark might not. But when you're just that big and smart and know where to be, and even if somebody can push you around, the fact that they have to, right? The fact that you don't have to be all that physical to get a hand on the ball if they're trying to float it above you or float up a lob pass or try to make the decision on, I got to wait a split second to figure out what I'm going to do. I think we continue to see the lack of Williams' presence still affect what this team can do. And Nick Richards, like, has been a fine backup. He just doesn't impact the game defensively, the way that Mark Williams does. And I really want him back. Like, I just want to see what it looks like again, because it's been a while and it's unfortunate that it's been so long. We'll see.
Yeah, and I think some of the moves that they made around the trade deadline counter some of those weaknesses when you're talking about sort of physicality under the boards. Like, you've got Grant Williams, but you've also got Tre Mann, who had 8 rebounds against the Hawks. He had 9 rebounds against the Pacers. LaMelo, when he comes back, will have an impact on the rebounding. And so, I think they've done some things that sort of would help that. I think what's difficult about Mark Williams, this injury at this time, is it comes like just as he was, I think, starting to get the valuable experience that he would need to sort of take his game to the next level. And so I think some of that process will have to restart, because I'm not sure how much that he's been able to do, because, you're so concerned about ramping that lower back up and making sure that you don't, do anything that's going to, like, I don't think he's out there running like 5-on-5 or anything. So, a lot of this process is going to have to restart, and it's going to maybe have to restart at a very critical juncture for the Charlotte Hornets as they march to the back half of this play-in. But don't say it too loudly. Like, you got to whisper. They're going to march to the back half of the play-in.
This is Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Actually, go ahead and scream this. You can let everybody know. Always tell a Hornets fan about Locked On Hornets. You can make us your first listen. We appreciate that. And you can make us your first listen anywhere you get your pods, including on YouTube. Subscribe, hit the notification button so you know when we drop an emergency podcast, when we're giving you the daily podcast, Monday through Friday, baby. We're talking Charlotte Hornets basketball like no other podcast out there. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great weekend. Have a great All-Star break. We'll be back with you Monday to take a look ahead at the Hornets post All-Star break schedule.